So our topic today in the sermon is care and maintenance of the soul. Soul is not a word that a lot of Unitarian Universalists talk about. We UUs have our painful or just plain disagreeable religious pasts that we carry around with us. Our own religious histories in the early days of our exposure to UU make some of us resistant to theological terms like soul or spirit. So here I am faced with a seemingly nebulous concept that we call soul. How to define it? Where do I start on that one? Well, in searching for information on the idea of soul, I wanted a broader view than the theological one that some religions present, as in, your soul will be forever damned by being or doing, and fill in the blank. I fortunately came across a book called Care of the Soul by Thomas More, who is not to be confused with Sir Thomas More, a 15th century Catholic English saint. Okay. This one is the author of the book, Thomas More is an American psychotherapist who lived as a monk in a Catholic religious order for 12 years and has degrees in theology, musicology, and philosophy. More describes the soul as not being a thing, but a quality or a way of experiencing ourselves and our lives. Soul is about relatedness, depth, value, heart, and personal substance. He specified that his idea of soul is not about religious belief or the part of us that survives death. To him, soul is a dimension of our experience as a person, or is a quality in a place, community, or thing. The soul is what makes us human. The type of therapy that Thomas More engages in as a psychotherapist of the soul is that he does not try to cure human problems and foibles as diseases. He sees those human issues as necessary, sometimes painful ingredients in the person's life. Care of the soul starts with observance of how the soul operates. The serve in the word observance used to refer to the tending of sheep. In caring, we soul watch, keeping an eye on where the sheep wander and graze, whether it be a troubling mood, addictive behavior, or a striking dream. In caring for the soul, we observe and honor the obstacles and companions of our inner journey. In observing what goes on in the soul, there can be a point in the process where the usual problems of life, if observed closely, can reveal that the problem is necessary and even valuable. Thomas More is a follower of Jungian psychology. Carl Gustav Jung was the founder of analytical psychology, which talks about the experience of the personal unconscious in thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and memories. He also focused on archetypes, which are images and thoughts that have universal meanings across cultures. More relates that Jung says the archetype of life is embedded in the details of everyday, ordinary experience. We try to be fully human and realize our humanity completely in the soul. When we care for the soul, we might fully experience the highs and lows of family life, marriage, and work with compassion. Moore goes on to say that we usually want to avoid negative emotions or moods, bad choices in life, and unhealthy habits. But by trying to avoid human pain, failures, and mistakes, the hard stuff, we move beyond the soul's reach. What is the soul's salvation from the tough events of our lives? What is it that moves us beyond the suffering of the soul to salvation? It is by paying attention to our lives. We've all had moments that put us in touch with human pain, failures, and other hard events in our lives. For instance, when I was in my 30s, I had a really bad sinus infection. I was so weak and depleted that I can remember walking a few blocks to a local store and realizing that the 70 or 80-year-old man who was walking in the same direction was moving at a faster clip than I. I took time off from work and lay around the house trying to get better. While I was homebound, I started reading some books on religion and spirituality. One of the books was Shirley MacLaine's autobiography, Out on a Limb. She had some far-out spiritual stuff in there for this formerly Catholic girl. Things like meditation, reincarnation, trance channeling, and UFOs. I certainly wasn't so sure about the trans-channeling and the UFOs, but the rest of the book's ideas that were totally foreign to me set my life on a new course. I also read books about the history of Christianity that included information about how the Catholic Church burned 9 million women at the stake, and also gay men were burned there too, as witches because they were a bit too much in touch with the gods and goddesses. I also read that the New Testament of the Bible, which was written 300 or more years after Christ died, left out certain writings because they weren't politically in alignment with the Church Fathers' ideology. And I read about the Gnostic Christians who ended up in Egypt after Christ died. This offshoot of Christianity was not discovered until 1945. There were some earthen casks in the Egyptian desert that somebody found and translated. I was pleasantly surprised to read that the Gnostics saw women as heroes and leaders in their sect, actually rising to the role of bishop in the sect. After 12 years of Catholic school education, this and other ideas were totally unfamiliar territory to me. I was finally healed of my infection with an antibiotic and eventually found myself in Unitarian Universalism and eventually in the Hudson Valley, all because when I was sick, I took the time to examine my life as it was and to examine my spirituality. I had been living in New York City at the time and felt like it was a toxic environment for me. Within a year, I transferred my job to Albany and moved to Kingston, all because I took the time to be still. Illness and health challenges can be the greatest teachers for the soul. Amen. There are many other life events that teach us about the soul if we look. We get daily messages from our souls. They can be physical and emotional symptoms. We're tired or moody, angry or overjoyed. Emotional setbacks might be because of a family tragedy, loss of a job, a breakup in a relationship, strong emotions in a family relationship, or a myriad of other human experiences. They're all fodder for soul maintenance. Care is an ongoing process. It doesn't end. Awareness can change, but problems may never go away. Care of the soul appreciates the mystery of human suffering and a problem-free life isn't on the horizon. It allows us to see every moment of confusion and ignorance as the opportunity to find that the monster in the experience is also an angel in disguise. We need to care for this suffering with great reverence so that in our anger and fear of the beast, we don't miss seeing the star. The power of the soul is like a mighty reservoir. It is natural and stems from an unknown source. It is our task to find ways of being an attentive observer, to notice how the soul wants to participate in our lives. Soul maintenance requires reflection, and the hard work is pausing to savor the revelations, to ponder fully and really know what we are to do. The modern screen-driven world steals our attention from examining our souls. And there are so many things in our lives that vie for our attention. Work, school, family, politics, volunteer opportunities, and on and on. How do we retreat from it all? Jung provides a remarkable example of creating a space for his soul work, where he could paint on the walls, write his dreams, ponder, enjoy memories, and record his visions. He built a Tao retreat over a number of years, a place without electricity or running water that was heated only with a wood stove. It was a place that allowed his soul to speak to him. The story of Jung's tower gives us a few hints about how to take care of the soul, especially when it is threatened with being overwhelmed by modern life. Care of the soul observes the everyday conditions of life, but we have to allow the space and time for observation. It normally doesn't happen when we're preparing to report for work, or when we're preparing a report for work, or surfing the internet. So here are some ideas. Any of us could do something a lot simpler than Jung's tower. We could dedicate a room or a corner of a room for soul work. It could be a drawer that holds a journal to keep your thoughts and dreams, or it could be an altar with personally significant pictures or items on it. Retreating from the world needs to be a lot more intensive than a weekly visit to a counselor or an occasional camping trip. Retreat can be a set time every day when we turn off all electronics and isolate ourselves from the world's intrusions. It could be 15 minutes or a half hour of time alone for daydreaming, meditation, or prayer in your own sanctuary. Even 5 minutes in the morning dedicated to writing down your dreams or reflecting on the day to come can be a worthwhile soulful exercise. Some physical or mental expression of retreat could start a spiritual life that would nourish a soul. You might decide to take a walk in the woods. The Japanese word for a soulful walk in the woods is shinrin-yoku, which translates into forest bathing. Shinrin-yoku consists of a mindful walk to contemplate nature with all the senses engaged. Hearing the birds or other animals, hearing the wind or water flowing in a stream, being mindful of our footsteps. We have such a wonderful environment for this type of activity. Imagine how your day would be if you bathed in the forest. Linda Sexton, the author of the book Ordinarily Sacred, who writes about seeing the sacred in the most ordinary objects and circumstances. In her book, she tells the story of an old man who showed her a cabinet filled with things that belonged to his deceased wife. She says it was a sacred box. Similarly, a box of special letters or other objects is a tabernacle or a place of holy things. We can create sacred boxes and thus make the everyday sacred. When the common in life is made sacred, our religion is personal. Ritual maintains the world's holiness. If we know that everything we do, even the simplest things, has the halo of imagination, it can serve the soul, make the things around us more precious and worthy of care and protection. For instance, when I was a child, my father would light the candles on the dinner table every Sunday. It was our ritual for our time together. And I think fondly of those dinners and our time together. Mealtime together, undisturbed by the outside world, can be a ritual that forges bonds. Rituals that come from a solid source deep in the person's psyche speak more personally to the soul. What I learned from more about art is that caring for the soul may take the form of living with a full imagination as an artist. And you don't have to be a professional in order to be creative, to bring creativity into the care of your soul. When we create, whether it is with music, art, writing, knitting, poetry, gardening, woodworking, or any other creative endeavor, the point of art is not only to express ourselves, but to make an external, concrete form in which our souls can be contained and evoked. He further says that children paint almost every day and love to show off their art on the refrigerator doors or bulletin boards. When we grow up and begin to think of the art gallery as more important than the refrigerator door, we yield an important tool of the soul to the professional artist. Poets and painters have tried to tell us that art is not about the expression of talent or the making of pretty things. Moore says that art preserves and contains the soul, and that as we practice our daily arts, we unearth the eternal from within ordinary time. We engage in the special qualities, themes, and circumstances of the soul. Notebooks of our writings become our private gospels, and our simple paintings serve as holy icons. I see caring for my soul as a valuable resource for my psyche to survive the stress of what our country is going through right now. Having a daily practice of soul maintenance tools is salvation for the worried thoughts in my mind. I have to confess that caring for the soul is sometimes elusive to me too. But I know that the ways of caring for my soul, while elusive, are attainable when I take the time. Lately, I have been starting the day with meditation via a meditation app that I found online. It's free too. And I connect with nature in my garden, or we walk, one of those. Moore goes on to say that in spirituality, we reach for awareness and the highest values. In soulfulness, we subject ourselves to the most pleasurable and most exhausting of human emotions and experiences. These are the most fundamental aspects of human life. Spirituality is not specifically religious. Spirit can lift us out of the confines of the human dimension and in turn can nourish the soul. Moore says that the goal of the soul path is to feel existence, not to overcome the struggles and anxieties of life. The only thing to do right now is to be where you are right now, at this moment. Sometimes you'll be seeing in the bright light of consciousness, and other times you'll stand in the shadows of the mysterious unknown. The soul's path is one that meanders and wanders. It is marked by neurotic tendencies as well as by high ideals. To the soul, the way of the mystics is open to divinity by surrendering to imperfection. Thomas More's concept of care of the soul is not a self-improvement project, nor is it a way of being released from the pains and trouble of human existence. It is not at all concerned with proper living or with emotional health. We care for the soul by honoring its expressions and by giving it time and the opportunity to reveal itself. We care for the soul by living life in a way that fosters the interior in you, the depth and quality in which it flourishes. He says that we know that we are on our way to soul fullness when we feel attachment to the people and the world around us, and we live as much from the heart as we do from the head. We know the soul is being cared for when life's pleasures feel deeper than usual, and when compassion takes the place of distrust and fear. By caring for the soul every day, we step out of the way and into our full genius. And I want to ask you this week, any goals for developing the soul? Think about it. Okay. Our hymn today is, number 1064, Blue Boat Home. Please stand if you're able. Low below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my twilight heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known, while you never see the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I by the starry sea, leaning over the edge and wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in a beautiful Our closing words are from the book Sources of Our Faith, and they're by Chogyam Trungpa. We have to go beyond words and conceptualized ideas and just get into what you are, deeper and deeper. The first glimpse is not quite enough. You have to examine the details without judging, without using words and concepts. Opening to oneself fully is opening to the world. As we end our time together, I invite you into connection with one another, to extend yourself to those that you may not know, and to stay for refreshments and conversation. If you're on Zoom, all are welcome to stay on for a time of connection in that virtual space. Please help us by moving the table up front, stacking the red chairs in the first 3 rows, and relocating your personal belongings after we're done here. I invite you now to join in the words for extinguishing the flame printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Go in peace.